Reality has never stood a chance against a juicy rumor. Give people a whisper, and suddenly the neighbor's cat is a government spy and the moon landing was filmed in a Waffle House bathroom. And trust me, the real nonsense hasn't even started yet. 1. A town once spiraled into full-blown chaos because someone claimed a local grocery store's rotisserie chickens were trained. Not seasoned, not cooked badly, trained, as in birds that supposedly leaned in conspiratorially before being roasted and were now spying on customers through residual poultry memory. One shopper insisted the chickens were aligned in a suspiciously judgmental formation, like a feathery firing squad waiting to report back to Big Poultry. Another swore hers blinked emotionally through the plastic container. The rumor spread so fast, the manager had to reassure customers that the only thing those birds were trained for was turning on a stick. Yet half the town refused to buy them for weeks because nothing says modern intelligence failure quite like adults worrying about posthumous poultry surveillance. Meanwhile, the deli clerk was just trying to restock macaroni salad while people demanded to know which agencies the chickens worked for. 2. At a suburban office full of adults who claimed to be competent, a rumor somehow caught wildfire that the printer was haunted by the ghost of an employee who transferred to a different department. Not died, transferred. Apparently, the man's sudden departure created such emotional turbulence that his administrative spirit continued jamming the paper tray. One person reported hearing whispering, which turned out to be the toner cartridge rattling, but the narrative was already too good to stop. Soon, employees were leaving offerings like staplers and fun-sized Snickers, as if the spectral accountant needed sugar to cross over. HR even considered a memo reminding people that spirits do not, in fact, cause duplex failures, but they feared legitimizing the hysteria. The real culprit was a loose gear, but everyone preferred the fantasy of an angry ghost rejecting quarterly reports from beyond the cubicle grave. Apparently, fixing office equipment is boring. Summoning a petty admin phantom is thrilling. 3. A neighborhood spiraled into absolute psychological ruin when someone casually suggested the construction crane downtown wasn't actually a crane but a disguised missile launcher controlled by foreign operatives with suspiciously good posture. The logic was breathtakingly absent, yet compelling to people who already thought the recycling schedule was a government trap. One guy insisted the crane rotated slightly each morning to aim recalibration beams. A woman claimed she felt geopolitical vibrations through her patio furniture, which is impressive since her patio furniture was inflatable. Someone actually called City Hall demanding to know the missile's bedtime. Meanwhile, the crane operator was just trying to eat his sandwich in peace while half the zip code monitored him like he was preparing to annex the farmer's market. Eventually, the rumor died when the crane lifted a beam instead of launching anything. But even then, a few residents whispered the beam was a test payload. Reality never had a fighting chance. 4. In a small company break room, an employee announced with total confidence that decaf coffee was actually made by microwaving regular beans to death, and thanks to one loud statement made with the tone of a disappointed science teacher, the rumor became gospel. Suddenly, co-workers were treating decaf like a radioactive substance, claiming they could sense the microwaved energy pulsing through their veins. Someone insisted decaf beans screamed when processed, which raises many questions about this person's understanding of biology, physics, and coffee in general. A particularly jumpy intern said she got static shocks of sadness whenever she drank it, as though caffeine level was directly tied to emotional trauma. The actual explanation, a chemical process involving solvent extraction, was dismissed as corporate propaganda. Meanwhile, the office microwave, which had absolutely nothing to do with any of this, was blamed for destroying bean souls. Nothing spreads like misinformation and the desperate hope that coffee is more dramatic than it is. 5. A rumor spread through a high school with the speed and precision of a stampede when someone declared that eating baby carrots would turn your insides orange, not your skin, your insides, as if your organs were planning to cosplay as traffic cones. The claim originated with a student who confidently said the carrots were radioactively polished, a phrase that raises the distinct possibility they failed biology, chemistry, English, and reality. Students began refusing vegetables and whispering about people who felt glowy. One kid swore his friend's tongue shifted hues under fluorescent lighting, ignoring the fact that fluorescent lighting makes everyone look like they're halfway to becoming a ghost. The cafeteria staff spent a week defending the honor of innocent vegetables, while students stocked up on chips, confident they were saving their organs from citrus transformation. The only thing truly orange was their nutritional judgment. 6. A rumor once exploded across the internet claiming that pigeons weren't real animals but outdoor drones powered by leftover Wi-Fi. The theory gained traction thanks to a poorly edited image of a pigeon with a USB port, which apparently convinced thousands of people who believed technology had finally defeated biology. One person insisted pigeons only sit on power lines to download updates. Another claimed they saw a pigeon buffering mid-flight. Someone even said pigeon cooing was encrypted communication, which is an impressive interpretation of a bird that can barely avoid walking into pretzels. Meanwhile, actual ornithologists tried to intervene, only to be told they were in on it. The rumor spread so fast that local parks had to put up signs reminding visitors that pigeons are, in fact, animals and not underpaid surveillance interns. Imagine being a bird just trying to steal a French fry while humans accuse you of running Windows 98. 7. There was once a viral belief that if you stuck your phone in the refrigerator overnight, it would restore its battery health by resetting the lithium-ion circadian rhythm. This nonsense was delivered with such scientific bravado that even sensible adults reconsidered the cold storage future of their electronics. People started chilling their phones like leftover lasagna, then acted shocked when condensation murdered their hardware. One man even used the freezer, claiming it would deep sleep the electrons, a sentence that should immediately disqualify someone from owning electronics. Repair shops nationwide saw an influx of frostbitten phones presented by customers who insisted the devices were emotionally traumatized by the cold. The rumor spread so far that one grocery store had to put up a sign reading, "Please do not refrigerate your smartphones," which is a sentence no society should ever need to print. 8. A corporate office became passionately convinced, that the elevators were powered by employee morale. The rumor began when a sarcastic manager said, "If morale drops any lower, the elevators will stop running." And unfortunately, sarcasm translates terribly in environments where people think astrology determines Wi-Fi strength. Suddenly, everyone was concerned their bad Monday might sabotage vertical transportation. One employee blamed a stalled elevator on Gary from accounting having a negative aura. Another announced that humming upbeat songs near the doors boosted the lift field. Someone even taped motivational quotes to the elevator walls, as though positive thinking could substitute for actual machinery. The building engineer tried to explain counterweights and motors, but was swiftly ignored because optimism felt easier than physics. The elevators worked just fine the whole time. The only thing running on morale was the rumor itself, and it ran spectacularly. 9. A small-town grocery store once endured months of hysteria after someone floated the idea that barcodes were secretly radio transmitters for mapping shopper personalities. Shoppers became convinced that scanning items sent coded messages about their emotional weaknesses to consumer profiling satellites. One woman refused to buy anything with a barcode ending in 7 because she claimed it signaled spiritual instability. A man demanded the cashier scan softly, as if the laser could gossip. Someone even tried sanding the barcodes off cereal boxes, demonstrating a bold commitment to ignorance and unnecessary effort. Meanwhile, the cashiers, armed with nothing but patience and minimum wage, had to reassure people that the worst a barcode did was misfire and occasionally beep twice. But the rumor spread because it was far more entertaining than acknowledging that stores just want to know if they need to order more pasta. 10. In an office with no shortage of confusion already, a rumor erupted that plants in the workplace were equipped with hidden microphones to detect employee gossip. The claim started when someone noticed a suspiciously decorative fern and concluded it was too symmetrical to be natural, a fascinating critique of both geometry and paranoia. Suddenly, people were whispering near the water cooler, like they were in a spy thriller, ducking behind filing cabinets to avoid being outsmarted by ficus espionage. Someone even attempted to jam the frequency by spraying air freshener at the plants, which mostly resulted in lavender-scented chaos. HR had to release a formal statement clarifying that philodendrons do not moonlight as surveillance contractors. Ironically, the only thing the plants were monitoring was how quickly adult humans would unravel at the slightest suggestion of chlorophyll-based intelligence gathering. 11. A rumor once swept through a college campus claiming squirrels had formed a coordinated gang and were stealing student IDs to gain access to dorms. The theory hinged on the observation that squirrels occasionally run off with shiny objects, which for some reason was upgraded into a tactical heist operation. Students began reporting suspicious movement in the trees, as though the rodents were planning a coup. One student insisted a squirrel made direct eye contact with intent. Another claimed they overheard chittering that sounded strategic. Meanwhile, campus security had to explain repeatedly that squirrels do not, in fact, swipe cards or infiltrate gated housing. The rumor persisted mainly because college students would rather believe an adorable uprising is imminent than admit they dropped their ID between couch cushions. 12. At a local gym, a particularly persistent rumor emerged that drinking water during workouts confused the muscles, causing them to store fat out of emotional resentment. This masterpiece of nutritional incompetence gained traction when one overly confident man lectured a treadmill row about hydration betrayal. Gym-goers began performing workouts so dry they sounded like sandpaper doing Pilates. Trainers tried explaining the basics of human physiology, but were drowned out by people insisting their biceps thrived on discipline, not moisture. Someone started selling expensive dehydration protocols, promising accelerated results. All the while, people were collapsing, cramping, and wondering why their hamstrings felt like abandoned rubber bands. Instead of admitting the rumor was ridiculous, some claimed the dizziness was a sign of metabolic awakening. The only thing awakening was the gym's liability concerns. 13. A family gathering once descended into intellectual freefall when an uncle announced that Wi-Fi could erase your memory if you slept too close to the router. Not damage it, erase it, as though the device were a digital etch-a-sketch for the human brain. Relatives instantly panicked, sprinting around the house unplugging electronics like they were defusing bombs. Someone claimed their sudden inability to remember a coworker's name was evidence of signal interference, ignoring the far simpler explanation of being a human adult. One cousin insisted headphones provided a protective sound wave shield, which is not how anything works. Another defended their failing recall by saying, "The router lives on my side of the house," as if proximity to internet access explained all personal shortcomings. The family doctor tried gently explaining that forgetfulness is normal and Wi-Fi does not vacuum memories out of skulls. Nobody listened because panic is more exciting. 14. A supermarket briefly became a battleground of unhinged suspicion when shoppers started spreading a rumor that avocados were emotionally manipulative. Not unhealthy, not fraudulent, emotionally manipulative. One shopper claimed avocados ripened too unpredictably to be trusted, which is arguably true but not a psychological strategy. Another insisted the fruits go bad quickly on purpose to assert dominance, which suggests at least one person had been outsmarted by produce. Soon, people were holding avocados at arm's length, inspecting them like they were toxic coworkers. A man asked a clerk if the store offered therapy discounts for produce-related betrayal. Meanwhile, the produce department was just trying to keep fruit flies under control while grown adults accused avocados of gaslighting. The rumor lasted exactly until people remembered guacamole exists and they were hungry. 15. A rumor once infected a retirement community claiming that the local radio station was broadcasting subliminal messages encouraging residents to buy more pudding. It started when someone noticed the station aired a lot of nostalgic music between dessert hours, which somehow blossomed into an elaborate theory involving corporate mind control and dairy-based coercion. One resident complained that every time she heard a Sinatra song, she craved tapioca, which is probably a coincidence, but was treated like evidence of psychological warfare. Another insisted the radio host's pauses contained pudding cues, a phrase that should have been laughed out of existence, but instead fueled a minor rebellion. Staff members had to reassure residents that no pudding-related propaganda was being transmitted, though they also had to admit this was not the strangest complaint they'd ever handled. The rumor faded only when someone switched stations and realized they still wanted dessert, not because of mind, control, but because pudding tastes good. 16. A rumor once swept through a trendy co-working space claiming that the building's thermostat wasn't actually broken. It was purposely set to random temperatures by management to encourage creative discomfort. This brilliant piece of nonsense came from one guy who read half a psychology article and decided he'd cracked the code to productivity. Suddenly, people were blaming every inconvenience on temperature-based behavioral conditioning. Someone said the cold mornings were meant to sharpen strategic thinking, while the afternoon heat was allegedly designed to loosen mental rigidity, which is a poetic way of saying the AC unit was older than most of the interns. A few workers even brought in blankets and fans, convinced they were fighting the system like climate rebels in a dystopian office novel. Meanwhile, the maintenance crew kept explaining that the HVAC system was just outdated, but the rumor had already achieved mythic status. Because why accept boring reality when you can believe your employer is secretly running a climate experiment on people who can't even refill the communal coffee pot? 17. In a suburban neighborhood where absolutely nothing interesting ever happens, residents became convinced their mail carrier was delivering personalities based on how the envelopes felt. One woman swore that the slightly warm gas bill meant she was being targeted for financial intimidation, while a man complained that the crisp feel of his credit card offer indicated a campaign to manipulate his consumer energy. Someone even claimed junk mail had emotional residue, which suggests they've never opened a letter from the DMV. The mail carrier, who was simply trying to survive her route without being interrogated about envelope temperatures, kept telling people the mail feels different because it comes from different printers, a perfectly normal explanation that nobody wanted. Instead, residents continued analyzing envelopes like tarot cards, reading their fate in paper thickness and corner creases. Somewhere in the Postal Service archives, a carrier probably felt their ears burning, unaware they'd become the neighborhood's most powerful psychic without even knowing it. 18. A university campus once became obsessed with the idea that the squirrels had developed a barter economy after students noticed one squirrel dragging a bagel across the quad like it was preparing for brunch. This single observation somehow spiraled into a rumor that the squirrels were trading food, jewelry, and possibly academic secrets. A student claimed they saw a squirrel deliver a half-eaten granola bar to another in exchange for a shiny gum wrapper, which is less a transaction and more what happens when animals find trash. One philosophy major suggested the squirrels were modeling early capitalism, and the business students held a meeting debating whether to start leaving them investment opportunities. Meanwhile, the biology department had to send out a statement confirming that squirrels have no organized economy, no shadow government, and no interest in forming alliances. They're just rodents with a generous approach to stealing. But the rumor persisted because nothing captivates college students quite like imagining nature forming a better economy than their group project. 19. A rumor spread through a small office that the new hand sanitizer was secretly engineered to erase fingerprints, making the company compliant with some imaginary future crime. It started when one employee said the sanitizer felt too smooth, which is an impressive standard of forensic analysis for someone who thought Excel was an abstract concept. Soon people were examining their hands like they'd been cast in a spy thriller. Someone asked if the sanitizer vendor had a criminal record because apparently that's relevant to moisturizing alcohol gel. Another claimed they noticed their fingerprints looking lighter, which is interesting because fingerprints don't lighten and also because this person had just washed dishes for 40 minutes. HR had to send a mass email explaining that the sanitizer contained aloe, not a tactical fingerprint dissolution agent. But the rumor endured because nothing bonds coworkers quite like collectively worrying that the company wants to erase their biological identity through bathroom supplies. 20. A rumor once spread in a small town that the new LED streetlights were mind control devices calibrated to suppress individuality, which is rich coming from a place where every house looks like it was copy-pasted from a catalog. The rumor began when someone read half of an online forum post and decided the lights hummed too evenly, which apparently meant something sinister. Suddenly, residents were walking around wearing hats lined with aluminum foil, confident they were outsmarting city infrastructure. One man insisted the lights made him crave cereal at night, as though municipal lighting was targeting his grocery habits. Others complained their dreams felt corporate, whatever that means. When the power company offered to host a presentation explaining the energy-saving bulbs, the rumor believers accused them of staging a distraction ritual. The truth, that LED bulbs hum because they are lights, never stood a chance against the idea that someone was using modern illumination to tighten control over a population that already obeys posted speed limits, like it's a religion. 21. A rumor gained frightening traction in a local gym that the mirrors were digitally enhanced to make people look slightly worse so they'd buy more training sessions. This conspiracy took root when someone noticed the lighting made their forehead shine like a chrome bumper, and rather than consider sweat or physics, they blamed technological sabotage. Soon, members were standing in different corners of the room comparing reflections like detectives investigating a crime scene. One person claimed the mirror added 6 emotional pounds, a concept that should immediately disqualify them from discussing fitness. Trainers tried to point out that the mirrors weren't connected to anything except the wall, but members insisted they had seen algorithmic distortion, which turned out to be condensation. Meanwhile, the owner, who had spent years begging people to re-rack their weights, had to field accusations of psychological warfare via reflective surfaces. The fact that gyms profit from memberships, not mirror anxiety, didn't matter at all. 22. At an office where productivity was already an optional hobby, a rumor detonated that the vending machine wasn't restocked based on supply, but based on behavioral tracking, as though the Snickers bar had become a moral evaluation tool. Someone claimed the machine refused to dispense chips to negative people, which is interesting considering machines don't typically assess personalities. One employee insisted the machine beeped differently when they were stressed, which is impressive evidence of emotional telepathy for a device that can barely accept dollar bills. Someone else announced that if the machine ate your money, it was a lesson in delayed gratification, which is a poetic way of saying it's broken. When the vendor tried explaining inventory cycles, the office collectively decided that was corporate secrecy. In reality, the machine dispensed snacks whenever the coils happened to rotate properly, which is about as far from behavioral analytics as machinery can get. 23. A rumor once overtook a sleepy rural town claiming that the local cows had begun aligning themselves in circles as a message to incoming extraterrestrial guests. The rumor began when a drone photo showed cows huddled around a salt block, a perfectly normal cattle activity that somehow got interpreted as interstellar diplomacy. Farmers tried explaining that cows will stand in circles around literally anything they find interesting, including hay, shade, and possibly boredom. But UFO enthusiasts declared the cows were preparing landing coordinates. One man swore a cow winked at him in a way that felt cosmically intentional. Someone else said the milk tasted more intergalactic lately, suggesting they should probably stop sniffing cleaning products. Eventually, a meteorological scientist confirmed that cows huddle in circles for warmth and protection. But by then, the rumor had its own gravitational pull. Nothing spreads faster than the idea of livestock joining the alien welcome committee. 24. In a city obsessed with wellness fads, a rumor took hold claiming that the municipal water supply contained unresolved emotional energy from previous centuries, which supposedly explained stomach aches, breakups, and at least one bad haircut. The rumor began when a self-appointed water empath claimed she could feel historical turbulence flowing from her faucet. People began buying charcoal filters, Himalayan mineral sticks, and crystal-infused pitchers to neutralize the psychic sediment. One man refused to shower because he claimed the water judged him, which could also be described as low self-esteem. The city's water department, accustomed to complaints about chlorine levels, suddenly found itself having to explain that reservoir water does not carry generational trauma. Regardless, residents held community meetings where they analyzed tap water like wine critics, searching for notes of ancestral sorrow. Truth and hydration both suffered equally. 25. A workplace rumor circulated claiming that the boss's cat appeared in Zoom meetings, not because it was a normal pet, but because it was monitoring employee loyalty. This ridiculous theory emerged after someone complained the cat always seemed to stare directly into the camera, which is what cats do when they're contemplating new ways to ruin your life. Soon, employees were speaking cautiously whenever the cat entered frame, worried they were being evaluated by feline intelligence services. One person claimed the cat narrowed its eyes when they mentioned paid time off, as though actively vetoing vacation. Another said they felt emotional surveillance from the whiskers. HR tried clarifying that the cat was just existing in the same room as its owner, but paranoia won. People started waving awkwardly at the cat to prove their friendliness, which is possibly the saddest attempt at career protection ever recorded. 26. A rumor once spread through a fitness class that the instructor's headset was connected to a database tracking participants' inner thoughts. Not fitness goals, thoughts. The rumor began when the instructor told someone to focus, a comment so common it's practically gym punctuation, but somehow this got interpreted as psychic data extraction. Participants started wearing hats, assuming fabric would deflect imaginary mental lasers. Someone claimed the instructor predicted their desire to quit mid-set, which is less mind-reading and more the universal human response to exercise. Another insisted the instructor knew they'd eaten fast food the night before because she looked disappointed, ignoring the fact that the instructor perpetually looked disappointed. The truth was that the headset wasn't even charged half the time, but the rumor persisted because nothing terrifies people more than the possibility of their lazy inner monologue being broadcast. 27. A rumor stormed through an apartment building claiming the elevator's door close button didn't just do nothing, it actively judged you. Tenants began insisting the button possessed silent moral authority, punishing impatience by refusing to cooperate. Someone said pressing it too aggressively resulted in elevator karma, which manifested as more stops on lower floors. One resident swore the elevator slowed down when rude people entered, which is a fascinating hypothesis for a machine powered by cables, not ethics. A teenager even wrote a manifesto arguing the elevator had developed social preferences, which would be groundbreaking if true, and not merely the product of procrastinating instead of doing homework. When a technician explained that modern elevators disable the door close button by design to comply with accessibility laws, tenants accused him of covering for the machine's emotional intelligence, because apparently it's easier to believe in sentient buttons than basic engineering. 28. A rumor bounced around an office building that the photocopier was sentient and petty, selectively malfunctioning for people it disliked. The theory bloomed when someone announced the copier jammed only when they were in a rush, which describes every photocopier ever made. Others chimed in with their own tales of targeted sabotage, including crooked scans, smeared toner, and the machine refusing to recognize paper that was literally right there. Instead of acknowledging that the copier was a decade past retirement age, the office decided it was harboring grudges. Someone placed a chocolate bar on top as a peace offering, which melted and caused additional malfunctions, strengthening the rumor that the copier was vengeful. It tried explaining mechanical wear, but the office preferred believing the copier could judge human character better than management. 29. A rumor spread like wildfire in a craft store claiming glitter wasn't just sparkly decoration, but a government tracking material engineered to adhere to persons of interest. This masterpiece of paranoia began when someone observed that glitter is nearly impossible to remove, a property rooted in physics, not espionage, and decided there must be a sinister motive. Customers started wearing gloves while browsing, as though the FBI was waiting to analyze their holiday ornament purchases. One woman insisted she found glitter on her car days later and concluded she was under surveillance for buying too many candles. Employees tried explaining that glitter migrates like a microscopic locust swarm and will haunt your belongings until the end of time. But conspiracy enthusiasts prefer the idea of government glitter squads. In reality, if any agency used glitter for tracking, they'd lose control of the project within hours because glitter follows no rules and respects no authority, much like rumors themselves. That's enough brain-melting nonsense for one day. Now you get to decide which rumor deserves a trophy. Drop your pick in the comments, and if you survived, you know what to do next.